Professor, as you know, China has taken its case to the World Trade Organization. Can this dispute, in fact, reach some kind of compromise or resolution through the WTO?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Asieh. I think so. I think China has firm ground and present the case to the WTO because this tariffs are pretty much based on, I think, very groundless accusation of the unfair subsidies or unfair competitions on China's part, and it's also very discriminatory, right? This is only targeting on China's EV. So I think, China does bring this case to the WTO and hope for some resolutions. At the same time, I think China is still pursuing some kinds of diplomatic and price negotiations. There has been already 8 rounds of negotiations between China and EU. So hopefully there will be more and new sort of resolutions that are not going to, escalate to that kind of tariff war. And also, I think this decision is very controversial. When you look at the EU members, 10 of them voted for it, 5 voted against, and then the 12 countries actually abstained. So I think there's still large room for the two sides to negotiate out of this.
Yeah, one of the countries who's been very much against these tariffs is Germany. German automakers and politicians, one of them called this a step backwards for free global trade and thus for prosperity, job preservation, and growth in Europe. So, Professor, if there is no resolution, what can we expect from China? They're already targeting a brandy.
Yes, absolutely. I think China is in a reasonable ground to have the retaliations against these tariffs. So you're right that China has already probed into brandy, pork, and other type of products from the EU. They have also, tried to diversify their supply chain and trying to build some of the factories within EU countries like Hungary and potentially Poland and others. And they are also, I think, in a way, warning some of these Chinese EV makers not to invest in some of the countries that support this sort of tariffs, right? So that include countries like France and Italy. So I think all these are retaliatory measures from China's part to counter this very unfair, I think, discriminatory tariffs.
And I think one thing people may not realize, when you do impose tariffs, it's the consumer that ends up hurting. So if you could explain to us what these new tariffs mean for European consumers who are in the market to buy a Chinese EV.
Absolutely. Chinese EVs are very competitive. According to the EU Commission, on average, Chinese EVs are at least 20% cheaper than the European counterparts. And so with all these tariffs, it simply means that the price are going to eventually go up, and then consumers would have to, foot the bill. And I think this is also not very conducive to the industries itself, even though protectionism can give you a little bit breathing room in the short term. But over time, I think, there are a lot of downsides, right? There's a lack of competition, there's a lack of technological sharing and cooperation, and all these is going to delay the kinds of industry transition. We're already seeing a lot of reduction in the ICE cells in Europe. And so I think the faster these companies can really cope with the competitions and innovate and transition into the green EV space, I think the better. And not to mention, I think, if the consumers are not willing to make the transition, this is going to delay EU's, plan, right? They want to phase out the new ICEs by 2035. And according to the International Energy Agency, they can maybe achieve 87% of EV adoption rate by that year. And now with this tariff, I think it will further delay that kind of green transition.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Professor Yan Liang, thank you very much.